we now move on to Kylian Mbappe. Comments on the Euros being more difficult to win than the World Cup. First of all disclosure, this is not the first time he's made such comments. He actually made some similar comments before the World Cup in 2022, then went on to lose the final to Argentina. There's a lot of Argentinian players that responded to these statements. So let's just start off. So Mbappe, they're in a press conference, ahead of this Euro 2024 championship. He spoke to the media, and, he basically said that the Euros is more difficult than the World Cup. This is what he said, quote by quote. The Euros are complicated. For me, more complicated than a World Cup. Even if there is more pressure at the World Cup, all the teams know each other. We play against each other all the time. Tactically, it's a very similar soccer or football. Okay. Mbappe, this is not the first time I said that. Obviously, before the 2022 World Cup, he said this. This is what he said before the 2024 World Cup. The advantage we Europeans have is that we play between us in high-level matches like the Nations League. When we arrive to the World Cup, we are ready. Brazil and Argentina don't have that level in South America. Soccer is not as advanced as here in Europe. That's why the last world champions are always Europeans. Now, he said this before the World Cup, and then it ended up backfiring when he lost to Argentina in the World Cup final, and which is not a European team. But he is right about the European teams. Look, Mbappe, these comments don't surprise me per se. Kylian Mbappe has always been pretty arrogant, pretty egotistical, and he said a lot of things that's rubbed me the wrong way a lot, a lot. I think such kind of comments is a little ridiculous because of the fact, number one, whether one is more difficult than the other, I don't think there's that big of a difference amongst the two. Number two, you see in European championships, there are dark horses that went on to win it. Let's go back to Portugal in 2016. This is a Portugal team, by the way, in my opinion, in 2016, when you consider champions of a major international tournament, this is a very, very weak team, in my opinion. Let's read this team that started off against France in the finals in Euro 2016. So they had Rui Patricio in goal, decent goalkeeper. Their back four: Cedric, Pepe, Jose Font, Rafael Guerreiro. Cedric playing for Southampton at the time, Jose Font playing for Southampton, Pepe. This might have been. I think this would have been his first year at Porto, post Real Madrid. No, he was still at Real Madrid at the time, actually. No. So, yeah, a Pepe, strong Pepe. Rafael Guerreiro, my opinion, good left back. William Carvalho, decent holding midfielder. João Mario, Adrian Silva, decent. Renato Sanchez, who was really the other, he was probably the top player at this European Championship for Portugal, besides Renato Sanchez, and then Nani up top, who was, at the end of his prime, basically, past his prime, and then also Ronaldo alongside Nani. And it's not like they had crazy depths on the bench. They had a guy like Quaresma, Eder, João Matinho, Danilo Pereira, but you see, a team like that went on to win a European Championship, and they played crazy defensive football. That's why they won a European Championship. In the group stages, they didn't win a single game. They moved on to the knockout stage based on third place, which was the first time that a World European Championship introduced third place teams potentially moving on. So they kind of got to the knockout stage based on the technicality, and they only won one game within 90 minutes. And that team was able to win the Euros, and that's not a strong team, in my opinion. When you look at the Greece team in 2004 that won the Euros, where there was no world beaters there. Again, they played very, very announced defensive football. They parked the bus, they parked the double bus, and they won. And they won the entire Euros. In fact, they beat the host nations, Portugal, in the first game of this in the tournament and in the final by playing defensive, by going on a run. You can't do that in the World Cup. Denmark, they win the European Championships in 1992, yeah. They won the European Championship in 1992 after not even qualifying. Because Yugoslavia was disqualified, and they, on the eve of the tournament, they were put in, and they ended up winning the European Championship. I'm sorry, things like this cannot happen at a World Cup. Never will happen. You don't see these fairy tale runs. Every single World Cup champion that's at least within modern football has always been one of the premium favorites entering. When you look at the fact that Italy has 4, Brazil have 5, Germany have 3. You see the top nations, they always win the World Cups because they always have to. In European Championship, there is a chance for an underdog story to happen. We've never seen an underdog story in a World Cup in terms of winning it. No, never. We've never seen an underdog story in terms of a World Cup. So for me, I don't see the point he's trying to make at all. I don't see the point of him trying to say European football is more. I'll tell you this: CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers is the most difficult qualifying confederation in terms of World Cup qualifying on the planet. In terms of the fact that there's only 4 guaranteed spots, or there's not anymore. Now it's completely different. Now it's completely different. In World Cup qualifying, just because of the fact that what's it called? Just because of the fact that there's a 48 team World Cup and all that. But in previous, there's 10 teams in CONMEBOL, only 4 get a guaranteed spot, and the 5th place team move on to Interconfederation playoffs. And you could argue there's 7, 8 teams from CONMEBOL that have a real shot to have a good World Cup, to get into the World Cup. Not only should qualify, but they could go on a run and reach the knockout stage games, because they have some brilliant teams in CONMEBOL. So I don't understand the notion that Mbappe is trying to make. It just comes off as arrogance and disrespectful to not only teams in CONMEBOL, but also teams just in general around the world. Europeans, they have even UEFA, they have a chance to play in interconfederational cup playoffs to get into the World Cup. They, out of their own choice, refuse to and settle for a little bit less guarantees in terms of teams in the World Cup. Why is that? Why is that the case? Europe is so confident in their abilities. There's people like Mbappe that say, oh yeah, Europe is more complicated. Obviously, the best league in the world are in Europe because all the money is there, because the infrastructure is there. And that's where it is, and that's Europe has historically been a great space for football. Now, obviously, a country like Saudi Arabia or the Americas, the money is there, or America, there's money there too, but the leagues are not as developed and all that as they are in Europe. But to say that there's it's much more complicated or it's more difficult, I just think it's a little crazy thing to say. I think if you put Brazil and Argentina in the European Championships, they're automatically they're always going to be within that top 3, always of chances to win it. Brazil, in probably their worst run of form that they've been in a decade, after how they started off CONMEBOL qualifiers in this last year. They play England in a friendly in Wembley, and they beat them, and they beat them at Wembley. Now, obviously, Brazil is Brazil, and England is England, and as a Brazilian, as a fan of Brazil national team, I'll go in every game against England expecting to win, just because of Brazil is Brazil and England is England. But it just shows, how the levels of things. And I just with this Colombia team now, And, I'll give you this. CONCACAF, they're in a poor spot right now. CONCACAF is in a very poor spot. But just to say that, I didn't really agree with it whatsoever.